What It Means to Be You Part 5. Hello friends, let's start. Winter and Violet has arrived at Blooming Mansion. Winter speaks. I'm going to move out. I'm going to leave. What do you mean moving out? Catherine asks. Winter reply. The capital is too far from the manor. I think it would be better to settle down with my wife over there. Mother. Did Violet say so? Catherine asked in a trembling voice. Winter shook his head. It's because I'm having a hard time. Catherine replied. Winter, I can't even see you often right now, but if you move out, you won't come home forever. Then Winter replied. I'll come when Mother calls me. Is it because I'm bad to you? She replied. Winter flinched. He said, What are you talking about? Mother is always nice to me. She started crying and said, But even so, you still don't see me as like your real mother, do you? Winter looked a little flustered at Catherine's sad voice. James said when he showed signs of being dragged in. Think a little more about moving out. Catherine sympathized with what he said. That's right. Think about it a little more, Winter. We're not ready yet. Winter replied. I understand what you two are saying. But we'll have a place in the capital for now. Even my wife can't move around in hotels like me. Catherine's eyes were round at the words. What's wrong with that? It's not even just a regular hotel, it's a great hotel built by my son. Winter replied, I've been wandering all my life, so I'm fine, but my wife is different. It's not your home when you can't touch it. Winter showed signs of getting annoyed. He was a great son, but he didn't always hide his fiery personality from his parents. James nodded. Yeah. It's fine to have a second home to live. Sounds splendid, isn't Catherine? Catherine thought, what's gotten into him? She said it's fine as long he isn't moving out. Winter said, then I think you've given me permission. After Winter finished talking, he went back to the carriage. When their son left, there was a moment of silence between the blooming couple. At the age of 5, Winter was abandoned by his birth mother in front of a restaurant. He ended up being pushed around and forced to work every day. He only resolved himself to escape from that place 7 years later. When he heard two people conversation in a restaurant, did you hear? The Vitellin nobles started purchasing coffee beans. Why are they purchasing coffee beans when they're not even a luxury good? Who knows how nobles think? Maybe those noblemen are scheming something. Once he escaped, Winter headed to the Vitellin mountains, where he spent the little money that he had to buy a cart full of coffee beans. He then crossed the treacherous mountains once again. After all his trials and tribulations, he finally arrived at the blooming estate where he heard that his birth father had lived. While he traversed the mountains, the price of the coffee beans had increased tenfold, and the blooming couple noticed Winter's talent for reading the movement of finances. Winter appeared to have a very keen brain and was cool and ambitious in making money. It was not difficult to find out that the boy would succeed in the future. The two of them welcomed Winter warm-heartedly. The young boy, who was hungry for affection, could not come to his senses due to the warmth he had never experienced in his life. Furthermore, the couple had no better investment because he was a bastard and had no right to inherit the family, as they expected. Winter quickly began to make huge money when the situation stabilized. Even when they ran out of property, even if they starved, it was Winter who prepared the living expenses for other families. He was a man with a strong attachment to his family. However, his attachment towards his wife was not enough, so if he wanted to go to the capital, it became a serious problem for the couple. Catherine shouts, when did he become so obedient to his wife? What if Violet tells him to cut off the money that goes into us? James said, not long ago, the relationship between the two was bad. What the hell is he talking about now? Catherine replied, it might honestly be better for us to let them have the divorce. James said, a divorce now that you mention it. Violet doesn't know yet. Violet doesn't know that she can't have a child with Winter. Mixed blood descendants who only possess a single trait of the Khanits tribe, be it the silver hair or the gray eyes, are only capable of having a child with someone who shares Khanits heritage. It has been a long time since the Khanits tribe have settled in Le Cround, hence, despite the prejudice, at least a little bit of their blood runs in most families. But if think one woman who wouldn't have a drop of Khanits blood in her, it would be Violet, the pure-blooded princess of the Lackreland royal family. James said, I am certain they can't bear a child because it's been 3 years since they married. Catherine replied, maybe Winter will never tell Violet about it. That boy would do anything to keep the peace in the family. Then let us use that. If Violet finds out, she'll be furious. Of course, it's a reason for divorce, James answered in a heavy voice. After telling his parents about his plan to move, Winter headed straight to Violet. I don't know how she lives with that stamina anyway, Winter muttered and looked up at his wife for a while without taking his eyes off. Since his wife fell asleep, he wanted to check something in the meantime. Winter asked Hyle to open the door to Violet's dress room. He thought, upon returning here, Violet returned in a dark, plain dress. In the capital city, she enjoyed bright clothes, so he had no idea why she chose dresses that didn't match her skin at all. Winter muttered inside the dressing room, even witches in the West will wear more than this. He wondered why his wife bought multiple sets of this dress. Winter, who came out of her room, said to Hyle, my wife doesn't touch anything unless it's private property. I'd rather buy her some more land. President, something isn't right, Hyle said with a curious look. Is the young lady, aren't you lending her the Long Leawood land for a bargain price? What? Winter asked. Hyle replied, that's true. When the Lord got married, the area of the land written in the premarital contract as the young lady's private property was 5,000 katashans. Isn't it the land where you can get 2,000 lakna per month even if you give tenant farming? No matter how many you get. Is that all? Winter asked. First of all, if you use 2,000 lakna for dignity alone, it's twice as much the lady, and as I said, if you get caught. Hyle's words were not entirely wrong. It didn't make sense to buy only these dresses with the quality land without getting so many households. Since she's a princess, it's cumbersome. So even if she gives the land to her tenants, she gets 2,000 lakna every month. And if she sold the land, she could buy countless dresses and jewelry. When Winter clicked his tongue, Hyle asked. Hyle said, should we find out, how much is the tenant for the land? Winter replied curiously, can you identify the tenant's land ahead of my wife? Hyle said, there's nothing money can't do. Besides, if the broker took it out in the middle of it, we'll have to figure it out anyway. Winter said, clicking his tongue, find out. Yes, Hyle nodded and went out. When Hyle went back and asked to see Violet's private property documents, the manager said, that's an old saying. Even if you're a married couple these days, you can't easily see each other's property because they're very thorough in distinguishing between what's yours and what's mine. But Hyle bribes the manager and got all documents. Hyle checked the document. Why are the documents divided into 500 katashans land and 4,500 katashans land? Manager replied, that's how royalty's private property is marked. Maybe 4,500 katashans are personal property, and at the same time include royal property. Hyle said, no, it's been a long time since the royal family was disbanded, and all these damn documents are like this? 2 recipients of the 4,500 katashan sharecropping fee were listed as royal property, Violet Blooming Lawrence and Carlson Lowe. The money from the 4,500 Cartesian land going in someone else's pocket? Hyle pushed for a moment and asked, who's Carlson Lowe? How can I know? Then he said, oh, I remember. Isn't it the name of that singer Carlson Lowe? Isn't there a blonde who's a good singer? He's a womanizer. Hyle thought, why does someone like him have lady account access? Then keep it a secret that I was here, Hyle said. Who would I tell this to? Anyone? Manager replied sourly. Hyle headed back, while thinking, most of the earnings from Madame Violet's land is going to an outsider, and it's going to Lacraline's best looking, yet worst womanizer at that. I have to report this right away. Young lady. Violet, who was fast asleep, opened her eyes to the voice of a maid who woke her up. The old master and his wife asked you to have lunch with them today. Maid inform her. Today? Violet asked. Yes, they told me to come by noon. Maid reply. Violet lifted herself up. There are about 4 hours left until noon, but Violet spent a long time wanting to be less flawed. She thought as soon as she came to Blooming's mansion. She felt sick, and the thought that maybe it's just faking illness made her laugh. At the hotel, Lulu did everything for her even if she didn't want anything. But she had to stay alert here. Then Flip came just in time. You've been wearing shoes all the way to the mansion, so I was wondering if you were tired. Oh, then please, Violet replied. Flip took off Violet's slippers very carefully and slowly poured her favorite temperature of water on her feet. He relieved Violet of her fatigue throughout her time in the capital, so Violet got used to it. Then, the door burst open. Winter said, "How long on earth are you going to sleep?" Winter stopped talking as he opened the door. "What's going on?" He narrowed his forehead and alternated between the two. As Flip bowed and tried to massage Violet's feet again, Winter said, "Get out." Flip replied, "Yes, but not yet." "Leave it and leave." Winter knew that if he made a mistake while changing body, he made a very big one. He gave away for another man to touch his wife's toes, that too by himself. Violet said goodbye to Flip, who was getting up on the way. "Thank you." Flip bowed and left the bedroom. Violet said, "I thought you had already gone to the capital." "I'm glad I didn't go," he replied. Then he said, "I'll do it." Violet asked, "What?" "Since I kicked Flip out and I picked up the perfumed oil, what else would I do?" "Well," as Violet still didn't have a clue, Winter said as if he was embarrassed, "I'll massage your feet." Violet asked, "Who?" "Me." Winter finally couldn't stand the frustration and shouted. Violet paused and then said, "You're testing an essential oil product. Are you expanding your business into producing essential oils as well?" Winter freezed from Violet's assumption. Then he thought, "People only see me as a business tycoon. Huh?" He said, "Think whatever you want." He kept pouring oil. Then Violet stopped him, said, "Philippe didn't pour that much." Then he replied, "I have my own technique. I might look like this, but I've done every job imaginable." Winter had a temper and grabbed Violet's feet, which were dripping with oil, with both hands, and Violet trembled when he pressed his thumb on the back of her foot and rubbed it. She didn't understand what he was doing, but it hurt more than anything else. Flip carefully massages her feet for fear of a very slight impact on her feet. Winter asked, "Does it hurt?" Violet nodded a little, and Winter said, "Then you need to say it." Violet replied, "It's hard to say that to someone who works so hard." It's not that it's not, but it didn't seem as simple to massage women's feet with his big build. He, who overdid anything, poured almost a whole bottle of oil, causing the smell of jasmine to vibrate throughout the room. Violet said. Winter, who somehow finished massaging, brought slippers and put them on Violet. As she stood up from her seat, her fluffy feet were slippery and her slippers immediately came off. No matter how calm Violet was, she muttered to herself in a small voice that sounded a little bit upset, "Why did you ask Flip to leave?" There was nothing to say. Winter picked up the slippers and knelt on the floor, and he looked up and saw Violet. She was looking down at him with slightly more emotional eyes than usual. Winter suddenly recalled the eyes of the nobles he hated the most in the world when he saw his wife looking down at him. But Violet's eyes were more intense than anything he hated. From head to toe, it was an elegant and perfect look that seemed to dominate from the moment she was born. Because of that look, he thought he might have wanted Violet to collapse and fall into his arms. Just don't do anything. Just be docile. Just live helplessly in the kingdom I created. He unknowingly thought so. Are there feelings more intense than hatred? What the hell is this feeling? Is it a greater hatred? Violet opened her mouth first. So what brings you here? Winter informed her. I told my parents about moving out yesterday, but my parents didn't seem to like it. But as you said, it's true that it's hard to get in and out, so I said I'd get a place in the capital. I'll find a house in the capital soon, and when I have to stay in the capital for months, you can go and stay there with me. I'll think about moving out completely afterward. Violet, who had darkened her eyes because she thought it meant she couldn't move out, belatedly understood what he meant and asked. Really? Yes, you choose the house. I'll only sleep anyway. It's okay to stay at the hotel. Don't be ridiculous. The capital city is a place where parties are much more frequent than here. It's hard to hold on without being invited and hosted like you. She didn't care about the hotel or the house. Either way was good. Violet, who expressed joy with a faint smile, soon recalled Winter's words to express joy more clearly. However, it was unimaginable to jump around as he said. Violet took a step toward Winter, then she leaned her head in his arms in a very awkward position. Thank you, Violet said. What are you doing? Winter asked. Then Violet replied, you told me that you didn't know if I was really happy. So, Winter asked. Violet said, it's an expression, if you don't like it, I won't do it from now on. Winter snatched her waist when Violet pressed down on the embarrassment and spoke calmly. Then Violet looked up at him with a rather rigid look and asked, are you angry? He replied, I'm not this calm when I'm angry. Violet was quieter, but when Winter just looked at her, she finally spoke again. We were invited to lunch. We'll be late. You can be late, Winter replied. Then she replied, a gentleman is never late for an appointment. Where the hell am I a gentleman? He asked. Why not? You're the eldest son of the Blooming family, she said. You can only say that because you don't really know how nobles are. Every time I said that, do you know how they respond whenever I introduce myself as the eldest, rather than a gentleman? They look at me as if I belong in the slums instead. That's not true, Violet said. It's because you can't see that look in their eyes. I saw it when we changed bodies. It's really not like that. They were not underestimating you. They're afraid. They're trying to press it down because they're afraid. They're afraid of your talents and are trying to win against you with their peerage. You don't have to act prideful. You're already a noble with enough power for everyone to fear. Winter looked at Violet and smiled and said, you are really naive, princess. Speaking of which, last time you said you'd change your body with mine. Right, there's a day I want you to change it soon, the first Sunday of September. There was a party to sponsor Cantus Monastery. I'd like to have that wine exclusively in the hotel, but they are quite high prideful. I need to show royalty. Violet nodded and jokingly said as if she knew what she meant, she speak, so you need their wine, I understand. Consider this my thanks for relocating us to the capital. It's full of people who make easy things difficult. Winter burst into laughter at her words without realizing it. Violet quietly laughed along, thinking that the moment Winter smiled was unrealistic. Winter said, good. Then get ready. After Violet finished talking, she was lost in thought for a moment. With this trip to the capital, she thought that her husband's words that he didn't hate her might not have been a lie. After accepting her request to move out, she was a little excited about her husband. She had an expectation that maybe if her husband went to the tea party in her body, he may recognize her loneliness. Maybe, if only her husband understand her heart, then she'll be so afraid of death. Violet thought that if Winter understand, then we would never switch bodies. Scene shifts. Winter and Violet are with Blooming couple. The couple's mind was complicated. Catherine spoke in a soft voice. There's no place like this in the future if you move out. Then James said soothingly, it's not like he's moving out right away. Don't be so sad, Catherine. I know that, but, Catherine wrapped her cheek in one hand with an embarrassing look, but I'd like both of you to stay at home a little longer if possible. Violet's mouth was dry as Catherine and James openly expressed discomfort with their plan to move out. She was afraid that this persuasion would change Winter's mind. Violet questioned the Blooming couple's failure to teach Winter even the simple etiquette of tea time in recent days. Violet thought Winter's parents might not love him as much as he thought, but it was impossible to say such harsh words, because he believed in and didn't doubt his parents' love. She thought she can't eat due to anxiety. Catherine continued, moreover, Violet, how's your health these days? Health? Violet trembled in fear, and said I believe my health is better. Winter intervened as Violet tried to answer with a pale face. It's not good, to be honest. It was also hard to come here and sit down. It isn't even weird if she falls down suddenly. The Blooming couple was thinking of turning the story of faking illness around. But when Winter answered with a firm attitude, they paused. Winter continued, the doctor says she has a bad headache. That dog-like quack. Winter, who saw his parents' surprised eyes, coughed and continued, The incompetent doctor was using a bad quality medicine that didn't have any use now. What's more, the medicine causes headaches. The quack must have paid for the medication in the middle. So I'm going to put him in jail somehow. Oh, my God, is that so? I didn't even know that. Catherine was surprised, covering her mouth with her hands, and held Violet's hand and asked, Dear, are you okay now? Yes, I am fine, she said. Violet's hand trembled slightly. Whenever she met Mr. and Mrs. Blooming, she felt strange. Violet barely smiled with her trembling mouth. Why can't I just accept their concern? She thought. James then asked Violet to bring up the main purpose of the meal today. So, why do you want to move out so badly, Violet? Winter replies, Father, about moving out. James cut Winter's words in the middle and said, You don't have to wrap it up, Winter. As a father, I know better. You who have lived here since you're 12 wouldn't have brought up about moving out first. Violet, maybe you. James took a break and continued. Did you think it would be better to have children and raise them in the capital? Then Winter said, I've already said I won't have children. Winter, Violet said, but Winter pretended not to hear when Violet called his name with a bitter face. Winter then continued, If you're done eating, let's get up first. Violet sighed, trembling as she saw him getting up from his seat. Then James, who confirmed that Winter had left, asked Violet with a slightly angry look. What is he talking about? What does he mean by not going to have a child? Violet replied, My husband doesn't want children. Then you have to persuade him. Would he have said that if he had something to put his mind to at home? James said. Then Catherine, who's next to him, stopped him. You know Winter's stubbornness. Once he makes up his mind, no matter who persuades him, he won't listen. Violet, what are you doing? Not going out and comforting him? Damn, what shitty people are they? Then I'll get up first. Violet excused herself and followed Winter. When both of them went out, James said, I can't believe the two of them have gotten so close to each other, for Winter to care so much about Violet. Catherine replied, I was speechless after seeing the two of them arrive together. They had never arrived together. Catherine continued, Thanks for today, we are sure. James said, Yes, it seems like Violet doesn't know yet that Winter and she can't have children. Catherine asked about some medicine. James said he had already prepared it. Catherine called her butler, and gave him order to call Violet's new doctor. Now Winter and Violet have to go out, and Winter is waiting for Violet outside the mansion. He thought, I told her to hurry. What's taking her so long? Seriously. Then Hyle came. President, so you were here. I came over as I heard you were out. I need to report on Madame Violet's land ownership. Winter asked, What's the rush? Did you find something? Hyle hesitated and told everything to Winter. Then Violet came and said, I thought you would have left by yourself. He replied, And why would I leave you behind? Let's go. But Violet didn't move. With Winter's personality, Violet thought he would have left first, but he was unexpectedly waiting for her. Violet stopped in front of Winter and glanced at him. When it came to child problems, he also didn't want to back down. So he didn't say anything first. She couldn't figure out why he hated the idea of a child. Besides, he didn't even explain why. When the talk of children came out, he just shut up and it was over. While the two were still facing each other, Winter opened his mouth first, and said, We can't have child. Violet flinched. Violet's eyes narrowed at Winter's ferocious, cold words. She asked, But why? He replied, You don't need to know. Violet continued, I'm going to convince you. He replied, I won't stop you from doing that. But I won't change my mind. Still, Violet's heart was a little relieved when he said that he would not stop her from persuading him. She thought she should be happy that Winter heard her. Winter isn't someone who will bend so easily. Winter turned back and asks, Violet, it doesn't seem you've sold any portion of the land I gave you. She asked, Are you referring to Long Leawood Plains? Hyle, who is also standing there waiting for Violet, reply. Winter continued, Yes. I also noticed that you don't have any proper jewelry. Is there a reason as to why? Do you perhaps have something else that takes precedence over maintaining appearances? Violet replied, there is no case. It's fine if that's the case, Winter replied. He said, but now that we're on the subject, let's shop for some things for you. She replied, it's fine. Really. I have everything I need. There's something I've always wanted to do. Wait, he asked. While he was avoiding her, Violet reached out her hand carefully and held Winter's hand. Then she looked up at him and smiled faintly. I want to hold hands, she said. She still couldn't tell when her husband was angry or not at all. She thought he was angry, but the corners of his mouth were a little twitchy. She said, now you're angry, aren't you? When Violet asked, Winter shouted, no. Why couldn't you hold my hand all this time? You could just hold it like this. She then continued, well, it was hard to find a time when you weren't busy. Winter, who was angry at Violet's frustrating words, stopped. Winter was not familiar with Violet holding hands until just now. Winter pulled his hand out first again this time. He said, this isn't all that great. You and I really don't fit together. I told you that I'd buy you whatever you wanted. Then, Winter tried to pull her hand into his arm and once again grabbed Violet's hand tightly to see if she was familiar with it. Violet's hand was held in Winter's hand. He said, yet this is all you want. Let's go, now that we're holding hands. Let's also buy whatever you want. Rashay flinched and asked, Aight now, don't you need to go to work? He replied within grumpy way, what kind of a company would go belly up just because one person's missing? It's not even an important store. He held Violet's hand firmly and said let's go back to estate. Violet asked, weren't you trying to get to the main street for shopping? He said, I don't have time to walk around there and buy stuff. We'll call the main street here. Violet said, how are you planning on doing that? Violet thought, the first time she held his hand at the wedding hall, she was so nervous at that time. The man she had never seen before became her husband, but she didn't know what to do from there on. But he lost all his money that day because of her brother, so she felt sorry for letting his hand go that day. Violet regretted it. She thought, she should have held on to it that day. She should have followed him. If that happened, would he have hated her a little less? If their relationship has truly improved, maybe it'll be all right if she try and persuade him. Winter escorted Violet to the carriage. They both then went off. While riding carriage, Winter lost in thought. It was the conversation happened between him and Hyle regarding Violet land. Hyle informed Carlson Lowe is a singer, who is currently receiving a portion of Madame Violet's revenue from leasing out the land. Winter replied in angry tone, I know who he is. I have met him a few times through work. He was popular wherever he went because of his pretty face. Hyle said, well, there are a few other possibilities. Perhaps it's for tax purposes. Winter replied, why do you think it's set up as royal property? You don't pay taxes on royal property. Hyle surprised and said, really? He thought, we can assume that splitting up the land was for tax purposes, but I can't figure out why would there be another benefactor. It was illegal for me to peek at my wife's documents in the first place, so I can't even confront her directly. He said to Hale, it's fine, you can head back. Pardon? Hale asked, that's it, President, we need to solve this problem now. Winter replied, she's spending money on another man. So what? If she's really having an affair, I can just get rid of Carlson Lowe. He thought he could do so as long as she doesn't love Carlson, as long as Violet doesn't leave him. I still don't know what kind of person my wife is. Neglecting her for the past 3 years using work as an excuse is probably the reason why. She doesn't seem like someone who would be unfaithful, but you never know. There are plenty of people who commit atrocities while wearing the face of an angel. However, I don't want to be suspicious over groundless speculations. He unconsciously squeezed her hand. She shouts, Winter, you suddenly squeeze my hand that hard. Winter, apologize. Oh, sorry. Violet. Thought finally our relationship has began to move forward. The next day, all the merchants who bought almost all of their store items to the mansion, trying hard to please Violet with their items. "Madam, how about this dress? This brooch would look great on you. Please take a look at this one as well." Violet said, "You really mean it when you said you'd bring the shopping district to us. I can't believe you brought in so many shops." Winter said, "We'd be inconveniencing them if we didn't buy much, so get whatever you'd like. Just think how disappointed they'd be if they didn't make much after coming all the way here." Violet replied, "There's nothing bad about getting a face stamp on you, so it's also an investment concept, right?" Winter has no words and room filled with awkward silence. Then he said, "You are being uselessly smart." Violet began to show interest in flower products when they appeared. Even though she was trying to look around because she didn't think to buy anything, she said, "Pretty, oh my God. I've never seen such a flower pot before." Violet's curiosity spreading through her eyes. Then, Violet pointed to boots. "There are boots, too." He frowned and said, "What would you need boots for?" He thought, "That's not the kind of clothes I thought she will pick." Lady informed Violet. "These days, ladies wear a lot of boots. Instead of tea parties. There are also gatherings to manage the gardens." "It's real?" Violet asked. Lady replied, "It's a southern trend these days." Violet said, "Shish is unfamiliar with trends." When Winter saw Violet smiling from time to time, he thought that he should do this and waste his time sometimes. Tired of shopping, Violet fell on her bed as soon as she returned to her bedroom. She recalls how Winter bought all the items brought by the merchant because Violet didn't want to purchase many items, but Winter bought everything. She wondered if moderation was not in Winter's vocabulary. While she was exhausted, 3 maids came in and began to unpack all the luggage. It was also work to organize because there was so much luggage. But I guess he really didn't like divorce. At first, she felt frustrated when he said he would not divorce her, but she thought it would be okay if the relationship with him gradually improved in this way. "Young lady, where should I put this?" New maid Jen maid at Blooming Estate. Violet asked. "Did you say your name was Jen?" "Yes," she replied. She said, "Yes, I have been assigned as your personal maid." "That's right. We recently replaced a few of the staff with new hires." The reason was that he was annoyed because they couldn't understand what he said quickly on the first day he changed his body with Violet. Violet continued, "Please put it on that table. You're going through a lot." Maid said, "Oh, I'm just having fun." Violet replied, "Then I'll open it with you." Violet lifted up her heavy body. Then other maids, including Jen, glanced at Violet. She heard the maids whispering that the young lady was a strange person, but sitting face to face, she may not be a comfortable person, but she was never a strange person. The little lady immediately memorized the names of the maids who came in for the first time and thanked them after asking for anything. On the contrary, the strange personality was on Winter's side, who had a temper tantrum even if only a small mistake was made. In addition, it didn't seem like the rumor that said the young master blamed the young lady was true. Then, the door burst open. When Winter, who was ready to go out, entered, the maids who were afraid of him greeted him and quickly left the room. "It's a request. Please tell me when you're coming in before you come in," she said. Winter said to Violet without even paying attention, "I've got something to do in the Harpit region. It'll take more than 15 days. Violet paused at his words and smiled without realizing it. She said, "It's unlike you to tell me where you're going and for how long." He replied, "It's because someone's been whining so much about it. Look at this, your room's a complete mess." She said, "I wonder whose fault that is. I'm honestly not sure if we have room for everything." "Just throw away whatever's useless," he said. Violet replied calmly, "Who is this for? Besides, you're gonna say that everything I have is useless." Grumpy Winter reply, "For some reason, our princess knows my heart." Winter walked sarcastically to the closet. He said, "If you understood, You can throw away all of your old stuff. Let's start with what's inside this closet. When he opened the door, he noticed blood again inside, as if someone scratched it in order to survive. A bad memory returned. When Winter worked as a servant, the restaurant owner, who was an employer, often beat him up and locked him in a barn. At the same time, he was thinking of Violet's hand that he saw on the day of his father's birthday party. Violet as Winter, what's wrong? He replied, it's nothing. He thought, what a wild thought just ran inside his head, and who in their right minds would dare lock up a princess? After a while, he looked back and asked Violet, you've never been trapped anywhere, have you? She replied, yes, I was. Winter said, don't be ridiculous. Who dares to the princess? Oh, was it perhaps when you were being educated by a royal tutor? She replied, I was a very good student. Let's drop this subject, you'll be late. Winter shouts in anger, don't cut me off, tell me who did it. She replied, it doesn't matter. Again Winter shouts, it does matter, tell me. Winter weighed down on his attempt to raise his voice. Violet, who was looking at the scene, opened her mouth again. I guess Ash really hated it that I was going to divorce, so he told Mother to teach me lesson. Winter said, don't be ridiculous. No matter how much Ash asked her to do it, my mother wouldn't have locked you in a closet. Violet continued, she must have been angry that I even dared to suggest a divorce. Winter's face was cold. He asked in a voice as if he had suddenly rested, this is my first time hearing. Why didn't you tell me? She replied, I tried to, right after I was released. I asked you multiple times to please give me a moment of your time. Whenever his wife caught him, Winter thought that the princess was blocking him from doing his job to talk about useless things again. Violet was always smiling when she said, let's talk, 3 years ago. And later she became angry. And these days she has given up. She continued, so I stole your body that day. I'm sorry about that. Violet rather smiled a little, as if it was funny to steal his body, but Winter couldn't laugh after her. Somewhere invisible, his wife, who always looked perfect, seemed to be she is broken, he thought. Yes, mister, this will happen, if you forgot you have wife. Winter shouts, why do you say it as if it was nothing? She replied, because it's already in the past, then it is nothing? So you think this is something we can just gloss over? Winter shouts. Violet replied, but there's nothing that I can do about it. Then you should have said something to me, he said. All the maid are worried, wondering why they are fighting so suddenly. Then Hyle came in time. Ask what's going on. Why hasn't the president come out yet? Maid replied, we're not sure either. Sir Winter suddenly started raising his voice. Hyle said, President said, he was only telling the madam where he was going. Then, the door opened and Hyle pushed his head in and said, Lord, you really have to go now. Winter said, wait outside. Hyle insisted, President, but we have to go. Winter looked at Hyle with angry look, did I not tell you, to wait outside? When Winter made an impression and turned to Hyle, he flinched and quietly left the bedroom. Now maid are wondering even have. Was kicked out. When the door closed, Winter looked at Violet as if he was looking at a prey. Violet said, you are angry, aren't you? He asked, and who am I angry at? She replied, on me. He then continued, what, do you think I'm angry at you? She tilted her head at his question. Winter erased his expression to the point that it looked achromatic this time. Did I look angry all 3 years? Always? He asked. Well, yes. Violet said, and then smiled faintly, and continued, you didn't look angry. You were angry, only towards me, and you have all the right to be angry. Winter have no words. Then said, anyway, I really need to sleep now. I'm tired. Violet sat on the bed and took off her slippers one by one. But Winter, who had to go out, came along and lay down on her bed. Violet asked with a rare expression, what are you doing? Lying down, he replied. She asked, Why? It's my room. Grumpy Winter replied, What a shame. Now you're also losing your bed to your husband. Violet murmured, What a strange man. Violet just lying down pretending to be tired, and she feels uncomfortable causes. Winter was staring at Violet. Violet said, embarrassed by her husband's cold yet warm eyes, You seemed busy though. You have to leave for work. Hyle is waiting outside. He replied, I'll go when you fall asleep. If you want to kick me out, quickly go to sleep. Winter said, closing his eyes first, and Violet followed him and murmured, Now that it's done, go to work. He said, Why do you keep kicking me out? You told me to stay the other day. She replied, It's an appointment, and it's scheduled. She thought, was strange that such a person who only knew about work did not go out. Just when I thought I understood him, he acted strange. Eventually, Winter lay by her side the whole time without going out, and Violet, who was worried, fell asleep because she was so tired. Then Winter left the room. He said, Hyle, tell them that we'll be even more late. Hyle said, Aren't we leaving? Winter replied, Something more important than a business trip just came up. Winter soon entered his parents' mansion. After sunset, his parents were enjoying banquet with wine at a dinner table with some of Warhosen's nobles. Catherine, who found him, approached. Winter, what's going on? I'm happy that I've been seeing you often lately, but I hope it's not affecting your work. Then Winter took a glance. He saw all the nobles are enjoying banquet with his money, but still looked down at Violet. He said in a sharp way, I heard you punished my wife and locked her in the closet. No wonder when he came in, Catherine wondered what else was wrong with him that made his face full of temper. Catherine, who has learned to control Winter's hot temper, said affectionately, Winter, we did it all for you. You know? He asked, How the hell is that for me? She continued, I don't know what's going on between you two, but Violet shouldn't do this to you. I don't want to see my son getting hurt. He said, No matter what, she's not even a child. Isn't it too much to punish her like that? She asked, Did Violet say she was hurt a lot? I'm sorry if I did. I'll go apologize. I thought it was all for you. When Catherine spoke with a tearful look, Winter's expression, which had been angry all the way to his head, became somewhat relieved. She thought, Winter has always been desperate for affection. There's no need to panic. All I have to do is act remorseful and hook, line, and sink. He said, Anyway, this time I can't help but to let it go, but you can't do that from now on. Never. With a sinister smile she said, Sure, I'll never do that again. Only then did Winter's anger soften. He then continues, Then please, apologize to Violet. She said, Of course, if she is hurt. Catherine thought, What a simpleton. Then Catherine asked, warmly patting Winter's arm, Would you like to eat while you're here? No, I have to go right away. Then Violet gets an apology, and I'll end up paying no more for this year's party. Catherine, who was not embarrassed at his words, paused, and said, What do you mean? He said, Two people can resolve matters between themselves however they like, but you meddled into my personal affairs. It's only fair for me to meddle in your personal affairs as well, Mother. She asked, Still, you're going to withhold funds. Was this Violet's idea? She always hated coming to parties, so she must say so. Winter made an absurd expression as if he didn't notice such an obvious thing. He continued, Mother too, it's money involved. So of course, it's my idea. Winter, in the end, Catherine's voice, which seemed soft all along, became louder. Winter grimaced and continued, I'm really busy. If you're going to nag me, don't forget to write it down somewhere and do it next month. I'll listen to you until you're sick of it. I'm 27 now. Why did you interfere with my divorce when I'm not even a child? Besides, it's not like you can't have a party just because I don't give you money for a few months. Catherine's shock was even greater because he was a son who listened to his parents. In a world where titles were not everything, the blooming couple had no choice but to strengthen their power through the social world. The inability to hold a party is directly linked to a flaw in power. Either way or not. Friends, our manhwa ends here. Now let's talk about Winter and Violet. I've come to understand that both Winter and Violet are products of their respective environments. The former was raised by manipulative, greedy parents, and the latter was basically used as a tool to end her family's financial problems. Still, like Winter himself said, this divorce problem is between him and his wife. So I'm still not forgiving Winter for ignoring Violet for the past 3 years, but I can see that he's at least trying to change, and I hope he'd also take the time to try and understand why Violet has broken and basically given up. Thanks for watching and supporting, friends. If you like this video, give a like, comment please. And if you want to make support, then use the Buy Me Coffee platform, because I have no idea why it's showing 0 earnings. I tried to search and it says maybe not update, and an update will show in next month. So use the link below in description box to support us. Thank you again.